Okay, let's unpack this. How much of what you consider your very core, your unique identity is truly you?
And how much is maybe the result of the society you've just been immersed in since birth?
Exactly. It's a pretty fundamental question, isn't it? It gets right to the heart of who we think we are.
Yeah.
And this deep dive, well, we're going straight there.
What's fascinating, I think, is how readily we accept our thoughts, our desires, as purely our own. We rarely stop to consider the immense, often invisible influence of the world shaping us.
Right. You just sort of live it. And to really dig into this, we're going to explore a philosophical clash of ideas, almost like eavesdropping on an intense debate, maybe. Imagine two distinct ways of seeing the self. One perspective, well, it's deeply influenced by Freudian thought, so analytical, challenging.
Provocative, even.
Yeah, provocative. And really focused on how things like morality, repression, culture, and power mold us.
And the other voice.
That'll be driven by, let's say, a fundamental curiosity, always questioning assumptions, pushing back a bit.
Trying to understand the forces underneath it all.
Exactly. Our goal isn't really to find easy answers here. It's more about making these complex ideas resonate with you, personally.
So they feel almost intuitive.
Yeah, like insights you've always kind of known, but maybe haven't articulated. We're diving into the forces that have sculpted who you are right now, as if these things are just coming into focus from your own experience.
Ready to see yourself in maybe a slightly different light?
It's a journey, I think. It promises to be illuminating, maybe a little unsettling, too.
As we confront some fundamental truths about ourselves and society.
All right, let's get into it then. Part 1, the assembly line of the self.
Ooh, evocative title.
Yeah. Picture this for a moment. What if who you are isn't entirely the singular, unique creation?
But more like a product, moving along a societal assembly line.
It sounds a bit stark, I know, but it's one way to start thinking about the forces at work.
And what's key to grasp here, I think, is that these shaping influences often operate beneath our conscious awareness. We don't always see the strings.
We just experience the results, our beliefs, our values, our behaviors.
Without necessarily seeing the mechanisms that produce them.
And a primary mechanism in this whole process, from this Freudian-influenced viewpoint we're exploring, is repression.
Repression, okay.
And this isn't just some personal quirk,
Yeah.
The idea is it's a fundamental tool that culture uses to mold us.
How was that start?
Think back to when you were a kid. How often did you hear, no, don't do that. Stop hitting, don't scream.
Constantly.
Right. These seemingly small prohibitions, they're the very first steps in shaping those raw, primal urges, what Freud called eros.
The life drive, desire, connection.
And thanatos, the destructive drive, shaping those into forms society finds acceptable.
Okay, so here's a basic question then. Do these suppressed desires, these urges we're told not to act on, do they just disappear?
Oof, go on.
Or do they maybe lie dormant, waiting to find an outlet in, unexpected ways?
Well, the argument here is they don't vanish. They transform. That energy has to go somewhere, right?
It's got to be channeled.
Exactly. So that raw aggression, that thanatos, maybe it doesn't show up as physical violence in adults.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not, but maybe it gets channeled into an intense drive to succeed in your career, always needing to come out on top.
Or maybe it simmers, comes out as passive aggression. Those little jabs.
Could be, yeah. And that powerful life drive, eros, it gets channeled too.
Yeah.
Into the very structured world of relationships, marriage, all those societal expectations about romance and commitment.
Can we look at some specific, real-world examples? It helps make it less abstract.
Absolutely. Think about the modern workplace.
Yeah, okay.
On the surface, it's all teamwork, shared objectives.
Collaboration, synergy,
Yeah.
all the buzzwords.
But scratch beneath that surface, isn't that intense competition? The striving for promotions, the subtle one-upmanship?
You're saying that that's Thanatos in a suit.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Dressed up in professional attire. And what about office politics? The alliances, the rivalries?
Expressions of repressed desires for power? Recognition.
Possibly. Playing out in a socially acceptable arena. Even teamwork, that corporate ideal, could be seen as a way to manage and direct individual competitive instincts towards a common goal, containing the chaos.
It's definitely a provocative way of looking at everyday scenarios, seeing those deeper drives at play.
Now let's connect this to morality. Because the Freudian perspective suggests morality isn't some innate compass we're born with.
That built in.
More like a societal invention. A set of rules designed fundamentally to prevent chaos.
Keep things orderly.
Exactly. As Freud implied, to live together in some semblance of peace, we have to give up certain individual freedoms. Can't just do whatever we want.
And this trade-off leads to the superego.
Bingo. The development of the superego, that internalized voice of authority, like a parent inside your head.
The one that makes you feel guilty.
Right. Guilty when you even think about stepping out of line. Think about the automatic feeling of discomfort, when you consider breaking even a minor social rule, like cutting in line.
Yeah, that cringe feeling.
That's your superego kicking in.
Okay, but is morality solely a tool for control? Doesn't it also shape our identity, give us a sense of who we are, what we stand for?
That's a critical point, definitely. While morality certainly restricts us, it also defines us. But often by telling us what we cannot be.
Defines us by limitation.
In a way, yes. And consider how the boundaries of what's considered normal shift over time. Think about historical norms.
Right.
Women voting, interracial marriage, attitudes towards sexuality.
Things that were once completely outside the norm are now accepted, or vice versa.
Precisely. And these changes reveal that morality isn't some fixed, absolute truth. It often reflects the power dynamics at play.
So those who hold power get a big say in defining what's normal.
They often do. Defining what's acceptable, what's deviant. This connection to power is significant.
How exactly does this power operate then, to mold the self?
Well, it works through the very fabric of society the institutions we're immersed in from birth.
Family, school.
Family, education, religion, the media. It's like a hidden curriculum of conformity, subtly teaching us the unwritten rules.
And this reminds you of Foucault.
It brings to mind Foucault's idea of the panopticon, yeah. Imagine a prison design with a central watchtower. The inmates can't tell if they're being watched at any specific moment.
So they just assume they're being watched.
Exactly. And the result, they start to internalize the surveillance. They police themselves.
Okay, how does that panopticon idea play out today? We don't live in prisons with watchtowers, mostly.
Right, but think about social media. Instagram, TikTok, all of them. Aren't they, in a sense, contemporary panopticons?
Explain that.
We voluntarily put ourselves on display, right? Carefully crafting these online personas. Constantly aware we're being watched by followers, by algorithms, by potential judgment.
The likes, the shares, the comments.
They become our measures of approval, reinforcing the pressure to conform to certain ideals, to present a version of ourselves that the system rewards. Performative identity.
Which brings up that fundamental question again.
Yeah.
How much individual agency do we really have in a system like this?
Well, the argument here is that the feeling of being in control, of making our own choices, it persists. But our decisions are often subtly guided by this unconscious conditioning.
So even rebellion might be predictable.
It can be. Even acts of rebellion can be seen as predictable reactions within the system. Remember, Freud talked about the poor ego constantly trying to balance the external world, the superego's rules, and the id's urges.
The three harsh masters.
Right. So even when we think we're breaking free, maybe we're just playing out another part of the script, a rebellious part, but still scripted.
Are we sort of caught in a loop then, where even attempts at individuality are somehow pre-programmed or influenced?
That's the really unsettling question, isn't it? And it brings us to the close of this first part. Are we merely puppets on societal strings?
Or do we possess genuine creative power over our own identities?
Is the very concept of freedom just another sophisticated form of control? It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about.
It certainly does. Let's take that into part 2 then, the anatomy of suppression. Let's delve deeper into those psychological forces inside us.
Right. So we have these fundamental drives, the raw material of culture, you could say. Eros.
That life-affirming drive. Connection, creation.
And thanatos, the drive towards destruction, aggression, unraveling.
And civilization needs to manage these.
A function, yeah. It needs to channel these powerful forces through sublimation. That's the key term.
Sublimation, taking that raw energy and redirecting it.
Exactly. Instead of, say, physically fighting someone when you're angry, raw thanatos,
Right.
you might channel that energy into a competitive sport or a passionate debate.
Turning it into something socially acceptable.
Right. We create art, build societies, all fueled by this sublimated energy. But the trade-off, as we've touched on, is always a certain loss of inner freedom. Something's held back.
It's interesting that even Eros, the positive life force, gets, well, domesticated, you said.
Yeah, I think that's a good word for it. Take marriage again. Sure, it's about love, connection, eros. But it's also a societal institution.
Designed for stability, raising families, passing on property.
Orderly transmission. The wild, unpredictable parts of eros get tamed, channeled into something more manageable. maybe sacrificing some of that initial spark for long-term security.
And this transformation goes beyond just relationships.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Think about the Victorian era again, that intense repression of sexuality. It wasn't just a random cultural quirk.
It shaped art, literature.
Profoundly. The pre-Raphaelites, Oscar Wilde, you can see their work as expressions of that repressed eros, finding alternative outlets. Creative sublimation.
What happens when this repression, particularly of eros, goes too far, becomes too extreme?
Well, Freud believed denying these fundamental drives could lead to neurosis.
Anxiety, depression, that general sense of unease.
Exactly. That feeling that something's just fell off. And in more extreme historical cases, when societal anxieties peak, you see repressed fears projected outwards, like the witch hunts.
A collective purging of what society couldn't face within itself.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah. Okay, let's shift to Thanatos then. That destructive drive. How does society manage that?
War seems like the most obvious large-scale example.
It is. Nations channeling collective aggression outwards, uniting people against a common enemy. Often a way to distract from internal problems, too. Seen it throughout history, still see it.
But surely it manifests in more subtle ways day to day.
Oh, absolutely. The intense competition in the workplace we mentioned. The drive to crush the competition.
Thanatos in a business suit again.
Pretty much. Socially acceptable aggression, even seemingly harmless things, competitive sports, violent video games, they can serve as outlets. Vicarious release.
Okay, let's bring the superego back in, the internal authority figure. How does it enforce all this suppression?
Right, the superego. That internalized set of rules, morals, absorbed from parents, society, mostly in childhood. It's the primary enforcer.
And its weapon is guilt.
Guilt is its main weapon. When we even think about violating those internal lines, bam, that feeling kicks in, keeps us aligned, keeps us in check.
So institutions like religion, historically, were huge in shaping the superego, providing those codes.
Undeniably, concepts like sin, divine judgment, incredibly powerful tools for instilling moral codes. And even now, in a more secular world,
You still hear it?
you still hear those deeply ingrained judgments. That's just wrong. Even if people can't quite articulate why, it reflects societal values beyond just individual reasoning.
And the superego's influence goes way beyond just big ethical questions. right?
Yeah. It influences choices in everything. The clothes we feel comfortable wearing, the careers we think we should pursue, that nagging feeling you ought to be doing something else, something more respectable.
That's the superego talking.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
And not complying with its demands can lead to real emotional distress, anxiety, that feeling of failure.
This paints a pretty stark picture. Is this trade-off really unavoidable? Freedom versus belonging?
Well, the Freudian take is that some level of suppression is necessary for any society to work. We have to sacrifice some individual desires for the collective good. Can't have everyone running wild.
But the problem comes when it goes too far.
Exactly. When the suppression becomes so pervasive that we lose touch with our authentic selves, we start mistaking the roles we play for who we actually are.
Can you give an example of performing these identities?
Gender roles are a classic one. From a very young age, we're bombarded with messages about how boys and girls are supposed to behave, feel, even think.
These are performances.
Often, yes. Performances that might not align at all with an individual's inner sense of self. But the pressure to conform, it can be immense, trapping people in expectations.
Are there any real escapes then? Or is rebellion just another kind of conformity?
That's the tricky part. Even countercultural movements, punk, hippies, whatever, that seem to reject mainstream norms.
They often end up with their own strict rules.
Exactly. Their own codes, their own uniforms, their own ways of policing who's in and who's out. It often becomes a trade. One set of repressions for another, still conforming, just to a different group.
And culture itself, art, media, traditions, reinforces all this.
Hugely. Culture reflects and reinforces what society deems acceptable. It creates hierarchies of value. This art is good, that music is bad, this fashion is desirable, often rooted in those sublimated desires we talked about.
But these cultural norms aren't set in stone, are they? They change.
Precisely. Look at beauty standards. The Renaissance ideal more voluptuous figures. Compare that to the modern, often very thin ideal.
A difference.
Huge difference. These shifts mirror evolving societal priorities, values, maybe even anxieties. But the underlying pressure to conform to whatever the dominant ideal is, that often remains constant.
So, as we wrap up part 2, what's the core takeaway about this anatomy of suppression?
It's really this constant ongoing tension between our deep inner drives, eros and thanatos, and the demands of living in a society. Freud was pretty pessimistic about fully resolving it.
No easy answers again.
No easy answers, but he did suggest that just recognizing the constructed nature of these constraints, seeing the assembly line, so to speak, that can be the first step.
Towards questioning, maybe redefining things for ourselves.
Exactly. The struggle for authenticity in a world that constantly tries to shape us, maybe that's a fundamental part of being human.
Which leads us perfectly into our final section, the paradox of freedom.
Yes, part 3, exploring the central paradox. Do the very systems that promise us liberation, civilization, technology, even morality, actually end up confining us in subtle, powerful ways?
It seems counterintuitive. Civilization's achievements are built on this repression.
That's the argument. We get order, safety, progress. But it comes at the cost of suppressing parts of ourselves. We're offered freedom, but it's freedom within boundaries. Autonomy, but only after surrendering essential parts of the self.
Thinking about progress, having these built-in contradictions is challenging.
Let's take technology again. Smartphones, social media, AI. We see them as tools of liberation, right? Connecting us, informing us, empowering us.
Yeah, that's the promise.
But have they also become instruments of control? Algorithms shaping our thoughts, our desires, our digital footprints tracked constantly, trading privacy for convenience.
Is this real freedom? Or just a very comfortable cage? The gilded cage, maybe?
That's the question, a gilded cage of our own making. And let's loop back to morality, too.
As a social construct for order.
Right. Intended to create stability. But it inevitably becomes a mechanism of power, doesn't it? Policing behavior, suppressing dissent. Even well-intentioned moral codes can become oppressive when they get rigid, exclusionary.
Defining what's acceptable and punishing deviation.
Exactly. Which brings us back to normalcy.
Let's revisit that. How does normalcy fit into this paradox?
Well, normalcy, as we've said, is an objective. It tends to reflect the interests of those holding power at a given time. It defines what's desirable, what's acceptable, and marginalizes or punishes deviation.
But it's fluid.
It's fluid. Look at changing attitudes, interracial marriage, gender identity. The very fact that normal changes reveals its function as a tool for maintaining a certain kind of order, a certain kind of control.
Yet, despite this potential for oppression, there's a real allure to morality, isn't there? A comfort in shared values.
Absolutely. Morality offers structure, purpose, a sense of belonging, a framework of right and wrong. It feels good to be good.
The cost.
The cost, from this perspective, is often sacrificing that inner freedom, trading authenticity for acceptance. We become complicit, in a way, in our own self-repression to fit in.
Which leads to Freud's really stark idea about civilization itself.
Yeah, his provocative suggestion that civilization is fundamentally an act of violence against our own nature.
Violence. That's strong.
It is, requiring the constant suppression of primal instincts just so we can coexist peacefully. But this leaves us fundamentally unsatisfied. There's a lingering hunger.
A hunger that finds expression where?
Maybe in art, literature, music. Those moments that bypass the rational mind and touch something deeper. Glimpses of the repressed, perhaps awakening a kind of longing within us.
What is that longing, though? What are we really yearning for?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The heart of the paradox. Are we longing for true, unfettered freedom? For authenticity? For wholeness? A way of being that civilization seems to fragment.
And Freud doesn't give us the answer.
No easy answers from Freud. He just forces us to confront the unsettling possibility that our identities, the very sense of I, might not be entirely our own creation. We're deeply shaped products.
And that realization can be quite unsettling when you apply it to just everyday life.
Totally. Think about scrolling through those perfectly curated social media feeds. Or how you might subtly change your opinions to fit in during a meeting at work.
Or swallowing your real feelings in a relationship to avoid conflict.
All those little moments, they highlight just how deeply ingrained this self-censorship, this performance, can become.
So as we wrap up this whole exploration, what's the most profound, maybe most disturbing insight Freud leaves us with about this paradox?
Maybe the most disturbing part is realizing we're not just passive victims of this societal programming. We are active participants.
We reinforce the system ourselves.
Yeah, through our own conformity, our own choices to self-censor, our own desire for acceptance, we become both the prisoner and the jailer.
Wow, prisoner and jailer.
That's the human condition, according to this line of thought. Complex, contradictory, and often uncomfortable.
A truly sobering thought to end on. So what are the final questions this leaves for us, for the listener?
The most critical questions are really for you, the listener, to take away. How much of your identity really is truly yours? How much have you unconsciously sacrificed along the way to fit in, to belong?
And maybe, are you willing to undertake the often difficult journey of trying to reclaim some of what might have been lost?
These aren't simple questions, obviously. No easy answers here today. But asking them is essential, I think, for anyone seeking a deeper understanding of themselves within this complex web of society we all live in.
Definitely food for thought.
Thank you for joining us on this. Well, this intense and thought-provoking and deep dive into how society shapes the self.
Yeah, that inherent tension, isn't it? Between our individual desires and the demands of the collective. It's a constant undercurrent. Understanding it better can be incredibly insightful.
So, we'll leave you with one final thought to mull over. Consider just one specific way you feel society has shaped your identity, maybe a belief, a value, a habit, and then ask yourself, does that shaping truly align with your authentic self?
Keep exploring that tension in your own life. Thanks for listening.